Coming up on One Detroit, Stephen Henderson talks redistricting in Michigan with Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. Plus, residents find their voice among the redevelopment and change on Detroit's west side.
Our challenge is renters don't stay.
A closer look at the Fitzgerald neighborhood and the housing projects in the works. And take a seat at a unique supper club.
Oh, whoa!
That connects culture with comfort food. I'm Christy McDonald. We're in Detroit at the historic Gar Building, and One Detroit is coming up.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929. How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television.
I have a question. Who wants to go first? To win? Who wants to grow our business? Who wants to make more money? Who wants more job opportunities? If you want Michigan to compete and become a top 10 state, raise your hand. Together, we've turned Michigan around and started moving forward. Now help us build a stronger Michigan than ever. Raise your hand at strongermichigan.com.
Support also provided by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Detroit Journalism Engagement Fund, and the Bill and Shirley Fox Fund for Leadership and Public Affairs Programming at Detroit Public TV.
Hi there and welcome to One Detroit. I'm Christy McDonald. Got a seat at the counter at the Parks and Rec Diner here at the historic Gar Building, which is also known as the Grand Army of the Republic Building in Detroit. Parks and Rec shares a space with its sister restaurant Republic, which is just next door. The architecture is pretty cool here. It was built back in 1897 as a place for Civil War veterans. Both of these restaurants opened up in 2015. Then it was in the 1900s, mid-1900s that things started to change.
In the 1930s, they turned ownership of the building over to the city of Detroit, and it became the Department of Parks and Recreation. That's the original sign behind us right there. The original deed from 1899 states that since this was a Civil War memorial, that the first floor always had to be open to the public, which is why the owners wanted to make sure that it was something that honored the history of the building and the concepts matched.
You know, we have a lot coming up for you on the show, so let's get started with the promise to bring more housing to the Fitzgerald neighborhood on Detroit's west side. Ella Fitzgerald Park just opened last summer, and planned housing changes are being touted to city planners from around the country as a model for Detroit. Well, we're going to take a closer look at how the plans are coming along and what longtime residents are concerned about. Plus, Stephen Henderson talks with new Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson about redistricting in the state. And then, pull up a seat at the table. We are invited to a supper club that brings together culture and tradition and comfort food. It is all coming up for you. So let's turn to Fitzgerald. It's one of the neighborhoods that Detroit Public Television is taking a closer look at in an effort to understand the biggest issues and concerns on the minds of people who live in the area. The Fitzgerald Revitalization Project is also a big part of a city initiative to restore the historic neighborhood, focusing on housing and green space, and possibly using it as a model for other areas in the city. Wow. The out-of-towners roll north on the Lodge, a tour hosted by City Lab, part of their national convention last fall.
We're heading out to Northwest Detroit to an area where we began as the city, one of our first comprehensive neighborhood planning processes since the Duggan administration really began.
Their destination, the Fitzgerald neighborhood. It made headlines 2 years ago when Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan announced it would be getting an extreme makeover.
So we really started by working with residents to start to figure out, what are some of the challenges, what are the needs, what are you guys doing, where can we help, and how do we as the city find some more ways to take on and manage this land, because essentially it is non-tax revenue producing property that we now own and need to try and keep up with the maintenance of, which is really a losing proposition on our end. If you make a right here.
Tours like this are common in Fitzgerald. The group hits the commercial corridor on 6 Mile, McNichols near Livernois.
We'll also be adding street trees, of which you can see there are none.
Have you heard of Fitzgerald before?
Well, yes, I had seen. I'm a city planner, and I had read about the Fitzgerald neighborhood and what the planning director was proposing and what he'd been working on.
A tour highlight, Ella Fitzgerald Park. Vacant land where houses once stood transformed into a playground, the starting point for a model of revitalization.
So this is the park on this side, and this is where that greenway will go through, punching that way.
I think the mayor is incredibly impressive, and I have met with the planning director, and he understands the DNA of a neighborhood and how to build on the community to make it better, from both public space improvements and housing.
So New York went through, obviously, a period of decline and has seen an incredible resurgence and has produced, frankly, a lot of inequality and things that have really changed the city in ways I think a lot of people aren't happy about. I think the potential here is that it's still early enough in the process that hopefully some of the ways that they're doing development, the ways that they're talking about the changes in the city could have a different path than what happened in New York.
It shows this home right here. You see that? If you can see it, I guarantee you will not recognize it today because of the rehab commitment that the developers decided to do for this community.
So the developer will be doing these in phases.
I see a lot of sincerity to what they're trying to do and some good things happening.
The city subsidizing the difference in the construction cost to what that value would be based off income.
The challenge, though, it's a layered set of challenges that come back to me, racism, classism, some systemic things that are going to take a long, long time to deal with.
When the Fitzgerald Revitalization Project started, the developer, Century Partners, announced they would rehab and sell 100 vacant homes by 2019. Last summer, as Ella Fitzgerald Park opened, the talk was that all of those rehabs would still come online, but with completion pushed back a year to 2020.
We know we got a ways to go. We got new street surface, new sidewalks, but you don't have to look too far to see we got to work our way down the street now that we got the park rebuilt, to get these houses rebuilt, to move families back in, but it's going to be a whole lot easier.
So far, 3 homes have been finished and sold. Century Partners telling One Detroit 7 more should be ready this spring.
And if we step down just a couple steps.
On the west edge of Fitzgerald, Lola Holton worries they're losing valuable housing stock. She's lived here for 45 years.
This does not make any sense. This house that's all, look, like you can almost blow it down. Look, the front door wide open now. That must have just happened. This neighborhood deteriorated in a matter of 5 years. I mean, it went from, riches to rags.
Holton spoke with other Fitzgerald stakeholders at the University of Detroit Mercy in January. It was a meeting organized by CDAD, Community Development Advocates of Detroit, and Detroit Public Television, as part of an initiative to hold community conversations to further neighborhood participation and solutions to problems.
Our challenge is renters don't stay long. And so what you thought you've accomplished over 6 months, now you go back and the house is empty.
I think you have multiple cultures that exist in Fitzgerald. You do have sort of the culture that's been described that people have been there for decades. They own their house, they care about their house. Their house is very nice. The neighbors around them, some of them, the culture of poverty, the lack of resources, and a lot of short-term thinking.
We can talk about all this all day, we can make streets of gold, but if a person can't read in 2019 at a functional level, and we got 49%, and the next generations are becoming just as bad.
So this is UD right here.
The developers with Century Partners say it's been a challenge finding people equipped to do the work. They've taken on their own workforce development project, training 45 people to clean out and paint homes, do lawn maintenance, shovel snow, and provide security.
You know, if you look what happened downtown, they overspent in the beginning to get a place like downtown moving. I don't see how in a place like Fitzgerald that's been systematically disinvested for decades, how you don't employ a similar philosophy where you get real, true resources in scale, in mass, into the hands of the people who live here, into the businesses. I don't see the resources.
I think if we can organize together, then we can really speak with one voice to hold the city accountable for what they said they were going to do.
I think we knew going in that for a neighborhood like Fitzgerald to be significantly transformed, that the only way you could do it was via time and gradual process or transformative massive investment. Again, if you look at downtown, it's not a coincidence that these 100 vacant buildings were brought back to life in about a decade. It took a significant amount of capital, resources, time, and attention. And so, you know, we think a neighborhood like Fitzgerald is going to require a similar amount of time and attention.
I'm looking to do some revitalization that really has some meat to it. I'm sorry, but that really has some meat to it. Because what I'm seeing, I really don't know what's going on.
Holton doesn't know about the progress of the Fitzgerald rehabs, but she has doubts 100 homes will be flipped by next year.
What is it going to be? I mean, is it going to be 2020?
Yeah, I think when the neighborhood gets the resources to bring to fruition the vision that we're talking about, then we'll be able to ascertain, you know, is it 2020, is it 2021, is it 2025? But what we're really focused on is that the change that happens on a sustainable basis.
We've had that conversation a million times. It's like,
but what are we going to do?
That's why, okay, the first thing we need is a plan. So we need to put together this dream team. It's real simple. And then what's the one-year plan? It's short term. And then what's the long term? What does this look like in 5 years?
Who has the master plan? Is it the mayor? I don't know, because the master plan is not laid out. And the one thing I don't want to do is start pointing fingers, because I need to point at myself. How can I do more? How can I help myself? And that's what I want. I want some of that money that they're putting on 7 Mile and Livernois and Midtown, downtown. I want it in the neighborhoods. And let's get busy.
And we will continue to follow Fitzgerald Project as it moves forward. All right, turning now to redistricting in the state of Michigan. This week starts a trial from a lawsuit that was brought by the League of Women Voters accusing Republicans of drawing unconstitutional voting maps to benefit their party. Well, new Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson said she had an idea to settle the suit by redrawing at least 11 districts in time for the 2020 election. Well, not so fast, said a group of federal judges who ruled just late last week that Benson didn't have the authority to make a settlement. But she explained to WDET's Stephen Henderson her idea behind it and the eventual redistricting to come in 2022.
You've taken a lot of flack for this settlement, for this proposal. People saying you're a Democrat, you're just trying to make sure there are more Democrats in the state house. At the same time, as you point out, this is a pretty restrained solution. You could have said, let's redraw everything that was challenged here. But how do you answer that accusation that this is also partisan, that even if Republicans purposely drew the map to favor themselves, what you're doing now is about trying to help Democrats?
Well, I think two things. One, there's nothing to indicate that these new districts are going to be drawn in a way that's going to make it easier for Democrats to win. They're going to be drawn by a Republican-led legislature and then submitted to the court. And at the same time, there are a lot of Democratic districts in this settlement. 5 of the 11 are democratically held right now, and that means that they could potentially lose their seats as well. So I think, one, it's impossible to even, I think, predict what could happen, and therefore, in my view, not appropriate to say that that would be part of my intention here in laying out and doing exactly what I just described. I think the second piece is the the fact that, for me, I need to be in this position making objective decisions, interpreting the law in the best way I can based on my knowledge of the law on behalf of what's best for voters. most of the time, the decisions I make are potentially going to influence or impact people who have political influence, whether they be Democrats or Republicans. So doing this job well and doing it the way that it's supposed to be done in a way that is in line with what's best for the voters and being bold in favor of democracy means that a lot of the decisions I make are going to anger the Democrats and they're going to anger the Republicans. And I'm prepared to take that heat because I'm in this job to do what's right, not to do what either political party would want me to do to alleviate any or to enable them to continue to rig a system in a way that would perpetuate their own influence.
So 11 House districts, but of course those 11 fit in the context of the other 99 that that exist. How do you redraw 11 districts without having to redraw the whole map?
I think, one, that's a question for the legislature that's going to be charged with redrawing these districts. But in my view, and I would say, secondly, it's going to be up to the court to really determine that. But if I were approaching this, I would certainly attempt to redraw the districts in a way that removes any partisan animus and partisan intent, which is really the unconstitutional nature of the districts. And perhaps you want to include more Republican districts in districts that were held to support the election of Democrats and vice versa. And that would essentially create 11 competitive districts as opposed to 11 districts that were rigged to favor one party or the other. And so I would look at it that way and do so in trying to minimize the impact on any other districts, which I think is possible when you're talking about a precinct by precinct level change. But again, that's for the legislature to figure out. But I would certainly hope that, to the extent that my opinion matters, that they do so and redraw the districts in a way that has minimal impact of any other district.
And the redraw, what about the disruption of this? You would have to do this by 2020, which is the next scheduled election for the House of Representatives. Then after 2020, when we have the census, in 2021, we'll have another redraw. Is there an argument that we should just let this ride until the decennial redistricting and fix it then?
I think that's an argument the court could consider because we did not in the settlement put any timeline on the redrawing of the districts, so the court could certainly consider that as an option. But I think we have to remember why we're here. We're here because in 2011, districts were drawn in the state of Michigan that were clearly in violation of the Constitution. There was clear gerrymandering, and it was so stark and so severe that it led to ultimately a ballot initiative led by citizens to completely change the way we draw districts in the future and put that in the hands of the citizens. So that's why we're here and even having this discussion today. And there's sort of a small aspect to that trajectory, but we can't forget that we're here because, again, in 2011, legislators drew districts in a way that was unconstitutional, and as a result, we're here today where we have potentially a federal court, if they agree to the settlement or if we go to trial, making a decision that will conclude that these districts need to be redrawn.
Well, and I want to talk more about this victory for your activism, I guess, on gerrymandering that we saw in 2018. There are a lot of questions people have about the idea that this can be done in a different way. A lot of people doubt that you can't. They doubt that you can draw districts in a way that doesn't put any partisan thumb on the scale. Can you talk to listeners about why you're confident that can happen, and in some practical terms, explain how you keep partisanship out of the process?
Yeah, so I'm excited that the long-term solution for this issue is in place through the Citizens Redistricting Commission that will, in my view, put citizens in charge of the process in a way that will create a balanced approach to drawing these districts with transparency and citizen involvement. And that said, I think, to me, starting at the end point, when you look at California and other states who have done this, the mark of a good, competitive, nonpartisan map is one that neither parties like. And so, that kind of tells us what to me would be a fair map that's nonpartisan, that doesn't really benefit one party or the other, and that it has competitive districts throughout. So the process in getting there, the best process is usually having citizens in charge, because you remove that conflict of interest legislators often have to make something work on behalf of them, their friends, or their party. And so with this upcoming commission that will be convening in 2021 to draw our next round of districts, my hope and my intention, and perhaps all the attention on this issue will help us do that, is to get as many people as possible to apply to be a part of this commission. It will only work if citizens throughout the state of Michigan sign up and volunteer to be a part of drawing the next round of district maps. It's an incredible opportunity that we have as a state to show the rest of the country how this can be done well and how it can be done not just in compliance with the law and the Constitution, but with the best principles of drawing fair districts that promote everyone's voice to be heard. And so that's where we're headed as a state, and I'm really excited to turn my attention to that now and begin going around the state, as I already have started, and having town halls and inviting citizens to think about applying. We'll put applications online and in branch offices throughout the state this fall so people can begin applying. And then we have a process that will be transparent in selecting those individuals who will be serving on this commission. Everyone can apply, and out of that, both parties have an opportunity to strike people that they feel are too partisan. And then out of that, a lottery system will ultimately choose the commissioners who will draw these next round of districts, and we'll work to make sure that those districts can be drawn independently, and similarly as they're drawn, that they're done so without undue influence, either nationally and here in Michigan, of various different special interests coming in and try to influence the process.
You know, I think we can all agree on one thing, that food can bring us together. Think about who you share a meal with, the special dishes that combine traditions and culture and family. Well, we heard about Shane Bernardo, who created the Detroit Filipino Supper Club as a way to stay connected to his roots by preparing the recipes passed down through generations with a new group of friends. Well, he invited One Detroit to dinner.
For sure, yeah. Today I'm cooking the meal in preparation for our supper club. It's called the Detroit Filipino Supper Club, and it's a way for those of us in the diaspora to help celebrate our culture and come together around food. These are spaces that are important for me to build socially, but also culturally and politically, because food is a really great way for bringing people together.
Oh, whoa! Wow!
So the way it started is a mutual friend introduced me and Ale together, and we were just reminiscing about all the different foods that we used to enjoy when we were growing up and how much we missed that. And we missed the camaraderie and the social aspects of coming around food, especially around the holidays. The Philippine archipelago is made up of over 7,100 different islands. And Luzon is the north, where my people are from. The Visayas is the central region, and Mindanao is the southern region. To look at our foods is just one of the many ways to show that how nuanced and how varied our culture really is. My grandmother transitioned to Ancestorhood in 2016, so fairly recently. That hit me pretty hard because when my parents were working, my grandmother was one of my main caregivers. But then growing up as an adult and having to deal with grief of losing my father and my grandmother, I can now pair the grief that I was feeling from that sense of loss with some of the what I refer to as ancestral wisdom and ancestral creativity within the food that I'm making. It's healing to be able to reconnect with our land kind of in an indirect way by preparing and celebrating some of these foods and dishes. If I were to ask you what your favorite food was, I'm sure you could name a whole list of things. If I were to ask you, is there a particular dish or food that you look for in and around your family gatherings, you could probably come up with another list. And then if I were to ask you, how would you feel if you could never enjoy those dishes or foods ever again, you could probably come up with another list of emotions.
Where are you going?
When?
Yeah.
Same time.
Okay.
We should talk about flights.
Yeah.
Because then we could travel together.
A reason why I'm really happy to do this piece is because it gives folks an alternative for seeing our community. A lot of times Filipino Americans are homogenized and our identities are really flattened.
And we thank everybody for being here as well and for creating a community for us.
So the work that I do within myself and within the Filipino American community here in Detroit is indicative of the kind of work that needs to happen for anyone that's been displaced off their ancestral lands and has found it particularly harder or more difficult to celebrate their own traditions.
And that is going to do it for One Detroit. Thanks so much to Parks and Rec Diner for having us. Next week, we're going to be following up on Governor Gretchen Whitmer's State of the State address, and that happens on Tuesday, February 12th. So make sure you join us next Thursday for One Detroit as we take a look at the governor's plans. We'll see you then. Take care.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, Craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929. How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television.
I have a question. Who wants to go first? To win? Who wants to grow our business? Who wants to make more money? Who wants more job opportunities? If you want Michigan to compete and become a top 10 state, raise your hand. Together, we've turned Michigan around and started moving forward. Now help us build a stronger Michigan than ever. Raise your hand at strongermichigan.com.
Support also provided by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Detroit Journalism Engagement Fund, and the Bill and Shirley Fox Fund for Leadership and Public Affairs Programming at Detroit Public TV.